It might be rebelling. Well, if it's rebelling, we can still... Wait. Okay, it's got some life. It's got some life. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 13 and 14. Now, these verses are part of the closing of the letter to the Corinthians from Paul. And yeah, now you can see it better. And these were an encouragement to them. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. They were a congregation that had a lot of problems. If you remember, they had a lot of issues. They lived in a society much like ours, very sinful and very corrupt. And so they had allowed some problems to come in. They had divisions, right? They had divisions where some claimed to be of Paul and Apollos and different ones. And, we still struggle kind of with divisions today. We have all these people in denominations that we really want to teach them just to follow Jesus and the Bible, right? So we still kind of have some of that division going on today. Paul encouraged the Corinthians to just follow Jesus and understand that they all belonged to Christ. That was the whole idea. And then they too had some sexual immorality in their congregation. They had one guy who had taken his father's wife. And Paul warned them that condoning that sin was allowing sin to spread in the congregation. So he said this to them about that. He said, do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? And the idea is that it's one thing to accept someone in the congregation to come and learn about Jesus and watch them grow and change over time. And it's another to bring someone in who claims Christ but continues sinfully and in an unrepentant manner, meaning they're not even trying to change or anything like that. They also had conflicts in the congregation. They were taking each other to court, and Paul really rebuked them for that. He said, do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world will be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? So that's good advice for us, something for us to think about, that we not get caught up in things like that with each other. And he basically said that it was better to be wronged or cheated by your brother or sister than to take them to court. And you would just read that in a few verses down. Now, I'm kind of skipping through 1 Corinthians here, so bear with me. But they had other conflicts over food, where food offered to idols was causing some conflict in the congregation. Some believed it was sin. Some knew that it was not, unless, of course, you're taking part of the actual ceremony. But Paul cautions them to be considerate to one another, to care about each other's feelings and conscience. He says, but when you thus sin against the brethren and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. So when we're not considerate to each other, we are sinning against the Lord. So that's definitely something we want to be aware of. They had issues with communion. Of course, they were being disorderly. Now, we realize they did communion a little differently. They were doing communion in their homes and such as that. But that was really beside the point. They were not waiting for one another. Again, they're not being considerate to one another. Some of them were actually getting drunk on the wine, which, anyway, just not supposed to do that. But we'll just leave it that way. And Paul encouraged them to be considerate, to wait for one another. And he promoted self-examination and a more serious and respectful communion to the Lord, much like we do today. We take it very seriously, and we're very respectful to the Lord regarding that. They also had disorderly conduct in their services. They had too many people wanting to all speak at the same time. Again, he's telling them to have consideration for each other, and he also encouraged them to have an edifying and not chaotic service. He said, let all things be done decently and in order. Then they had some false teaching in the congregation as well. Some did not believe in the resurrection, which seems kind of incredible since we know that if you believe in Jesus, you have to believe he was resurrected, right? So this seems to have crept in somehow. Maybe, we know that false teaching and unbelief has been a problem. We see that throughout all the epistles. I don't think that's really a big surprise. But Paul made these points regarding this. For if the dead do not rise, then Christ is not risen. And if Christ is not risen, your faith is futile. You are still in your sins. So we come back to our verses. This is, like I said, these are the verses that Paul closed 1 Corinthians with. And the idea was he was encouraging them despite all their problems, because they had a bunch of problems. And everybody does. We have problems. Everyone has issues, right? So he's encouraging them, though, even with all their problems, to be watchful. And that just means be alert. Be aware of the world trying to creep in. Be aware of perhaps your own sin or someone else's sin to help them. Be on guard against that. And then stand firm in the faith. Persevere. Don't give up. Never quit believing in the Lord, no matter how bad things might seem or how bad it gets. Remember, they lived in a very corrupt society, much like ours. Act like men. Now, act like men means be brave. Be courageous, knowing God is with you. Hold the line against evil and the enemy. Be strong in the Lord, not in worldly might, which fails, but be strengthened by the Lord's word. Be strong in the knowledge of God. That's the idea there. And then finally, verse 14, let all that you do be done in love. Do everything in love, from the standpoint of wanting to be kind and good to others. Do everything in love for God, for his people, and for the lost, for everyone. And this was Paul's encouragement to this congregation that had all those problems, that had all those struggles. And a lot of times, we ourselves have issues like that. But tonight, I want us to be encouraged by these words from Paul, by these verses. I know that we have our difficulties and we live in a similar corrupt world and society. But we can persevere and we can be strong in the Lord. The Lord was with them and the Lord is with us. So we can stand and be brave for the Lord and hold the line against the enemy. And if anybody here tonight would have any need this evening for anything that we can do for you or pray for you about, I would ask that you please let it be known as we stand and sing. We're going to sing 284.